We should probably get going. Good morning. Moving away from the video. 9 o'clock in the morning. Talk about financial aid. Awesome. I am Jeff Durso-Finley. I am one of the directors of college counseling at the Lawrenceville School. This is the other director, Holly Brooks Becker. Lawrenceville School is a boarding school of 800 located in southern New Jersey, which is how we stake our claim to coming to SACAC about every year. Just the quality of the conference, the quality of the people, the opportunity to talk about things that are important to us has been part of the reason we've been coming here for 10 years. It's fantastic. This program is something that we started about 2 years ago when in discussions and calculations about scholarships, college costs, parents, financial aid, awards, basically everything frustrated us to death. Nothing was working. And just our own financial aid counseling within our own school just wasn't happening. So we made the decision as an office that we were going to break it down and completely rebuild the model up from scratch. And the research that we did going into that and some of the conclusions that we came to are what's represented here. So we're now just a little more than 18 months later. So the true tragic tale, we've retitled this Solutions, because now we're starting to see some cracks in what's taking place within our own institution, and that's part of what we wanted to share today, to be able to give you perhaps bring it back to your own institution. One of the things that Holly and I always talk about in terms of going to conferences is takeaway. You spend 48 hours, 72 hours away from home. At the very least, you want to be able to go home with one thing, two things, three things that you can add to your toolbox that you can use when you return home to your school. So whenever we do these kinds of programs, that's our goal, to make sure that there's some takeaway. Okay? Do a little bit of a preamble to sort of just to lay the groundwork for how we got here and how we started making these decisions to alter our programming. As we move into this, some of these things will likely frustrate you or make you concerned, just as they did when we started digging in. Okay? So again, true tragic tale of college costs and financial aid. If you think about the evolution of college costs and how we got to this point right now, in a point in time, 4 years ago, if you went to college, you just had a job, you paid tuition, and your room and board, and you could do it on your own. You were a single purchaser at that stage. Okay? You can't do that anymore. As you move forward in time, okay, demographics expand, college access expands, right, and media expands. So now financial aid starts moving away from just a simple model of being able to pay for college into a larger purchasing, specifically debt purchasing. Okay? So again, the evolution of the model that thinking in your head has to do with the single payer model. An individual could pay for college. Right? The parents began to have to really be part of that payer model. That student loans became part of that paying model. Right? And now co-purchasing is really where we are in terms of being able to afford college costs. Right? That's just the evolution of plus loans. So you have the student's contribution, you have the parent's contribution, you have the student loan, you have the parent loan, and that sort of gets to where we are today, with a whole host of other issues that underlie just those exploding costs. So this is where our frustrations came from. Basically, incredibly exploding financial strain, some flawed financial aid conventions, which we'll talk about specifically, now creates this unsustainable model for families. They either check out, they do it incorrectly, or they don't find the college access funding that they need in many circumstances. Pushing college access out of the hands of many people, not because they don't want it, but because the information gap is so large. So again, when we first started doing this program, things like PPY didn't exist. That doesn't exist yet, but it'll be really interesting to see in San Antonio next year how that's changed what this model is. And I always have PPY in the back of my mind when we start talking about college calculations. FAFSA positioning is now gone. And we used to talk about FAFSA positioning in detail and how that negatively affected our kids. But as I said, now in our own community of 800, we're now reframing the financial aid discussions in really interesting ways that really promote individual independence for kids. Now, if you think about, yes, college is expensive, it becomes abstract. I'm not going to linger on this slide. It's sort of interesting to look at how much it's changed, but hearing that college costs go up every year, twice the rate of inflation, it doesn't really matter anymore. It really sense anymore. It's like as a counselor, when I do a counselor call and I call a colleague on the college side and they go, yep, highest number of applications ever. It doesn't mean anything to me anymore because it's going to happen every year. Okay? That number is just, you're numb to it, which is the same way we are with college costs. The most interesting thing to look at in this slide, though, is not necessarily the cost, but the red line going up on the four-year college cost, and then the orange one is hard to see on the red screen. But the thing that's the most interesting is that watching that gap widen. Okay, because the lowest bar is median family income. So that stayed the same, and costs continue to rise at twice the rate of inflation. That's an unsustainable model. I think it's fair to say. And if you look at it from percentage-wise, this is a stat. This is a graph and a stat we put in here just kind of sort of shocking. Okay, the college and tuition fees is the top red line. I know it's hard to see from the way the group is set up, but that's 1,134% increase from the start date of 1970. And these are other costs. So think about in your own institution the conversations that are taking place at the administrative level about healthcare costs and how that's kind of crippling budgeting models. College costs are crushing healthcare costs. Now, when we started putting this together, it was very easy to move into a space where we were assessing blame. Somebody did this, just because you felt so frustrated. And then we eventually arrived at a space where no one person did this, we all did. Right? Families, counselors, college apparatus, however you want to do, we are all kind of complicit in creating the current situation. And so one of the things we want to throw out there as a caveat is that we completely understand the role of an admission office, how that works. You have your numbers that you have to hit, you have to make the class, you've got demographics that are important, you've got trustees that are telling you to do that. Absolutely. We're an independent school. We do it too. We know what that life is like. Okay? We both worked on the college side. We know what that life is like. That is just the sort of the definition of the beast. Right? Financial aid office, so just before I came in, I answered an email from a kid who's working with the financial aid office. Said to him flat out, I find financial aid officers to be incredibly thoughtful and kind. Right? Just be communicative, be open, be honest, and have a conversation with them, and you're going to be okay. We understand the role of financial aid office, but that their disbursement of funds to create that need availability, that aid availability, is their role. And then there's sort of a obscure amorphous enrollment management apparatus. Let's take both of those things and put them together to create that class. Okay? Put the financial resources, the financial realities with the driving forces to create that class and put it together. Incredibly complex. Now, so again, no blame to that. But the issue is, for us, is that the role of the family is to figure out how that part works, and that part works, and they have no idea, and they've never done it before. But all of a sudden, they're about to purchase something that's $250,000 and have no clue how it operates. That's crazy, but it's the way it works. So, if there's folks in the room that have been doing this for a while, in more than, I don't know, five years, we'll say, you have a model in your head of the way financial aid works. How do you coach, how you counsel financial aid, right? And it's what we did for years and years and years, right? It was really sort of scary to wake up one morning and go, oh my gosh, we have been doing this wrong. We got to fix this. But this is what we all did. A family would come in and say, we need to apply financial aid. How do we do this? Or if you do your own financial aid nights, you start with the FAFSA, you start with the EFC, you talk about IM and FM, and you go right down to this list of acronyms. But this is what you would do. The EFC, NPCs, FAFSA, FAFSA forecaster, move through that, hope that they're communicating about the process. Think about a range of colleges, think about affordability, and have this really nuanced, sequenced movement through getting them to April of their senior year. Right? The problem is that it doesn't work, or it doesn't work anymore. Okay? So in the same way we have the financial aid counseling model, the regular college counseling model is something that we all do every single day. Hey, Johnny, it's great. Let's talk about, first meeting. I really enjoyed reading your questionnaire. We want to get going. Talk to me about the characteristics that are the most interesting for you that might make your post-secondary experience so valuable. Think about size and setting? Is there a degree program or a major you're really excited about? What really gets you going in terms of what you think about when you think of college? We quickly realized that for financial aid families, people who are going to be applying for financial aid, this is backward. They can't do this. They have to start with a completely different question first, solve some other issues, and then they're allowed to think about it. They can't start here. And it's going to change a little bit now, but we used to talk about, this is the sort of the extended metaphor that we used to use when families would get their financial aid packages in April. It was as if you were going to a car dealership, right? And you were picking the accoutrements you wanted first. You walk out of the lot, I want the deluxe package, I want the rims, right? I want the pinstriping, I want the heated seats, the whole deal. And then you get to the end and find out how much it was going to cost. Because that's what you wanted. You wanted this size institution with this kind of religious affiliation, with this kind of major, with these kinds of sports, and then you got to the end and you found out how much it was going to cost. Okay. We're hopeful now that as PPY enters in, that car dealership metaphor sort of fades away. So again, we'll talk about it in San Antonio, hopefully. But it's very interesting to hear some of the chatter that's already taking place about PPY. Is it going to accelerate the process even faster? Are they going to move things even earlier because the financial data is coming in so much earlier? Right? And in the last week, I've heard multiple anecdotes of kids who are now having trouble this year being asked in subsequent years to deposit before getting their financial aid award, or they have to apply early decision before they get their financial aid award. Okay? Now, correlation is not causality, but this is the first time I've ever heard anything like that in over 25 years of being an Mission College. So, enter PPY. Hopefully that takes care of this metaphor. But again, as I said, the common financial aid model, right, that many of us have been using for years, doesn't work, and we're going to talk about why.
Okay, so again, when we think about good financial aid, the best practice around how to counsel families about financial aid, we'll start. The starting place for us all has been the FAFSA. Okay, it's like the bread and butter of the financial aid industry. So asking a family to quickly calculate their EFC to determine their family contribution seems like the right thing to do. The problem with it is that the EFC ends up being actually misunderstood. Okay, so what it's calculating is actually determining whether you qualify for federal aid. That's its first function. The second one is it doesn't actually take into consideration any institutionally determined family contribution. So they're not, it's not a science, except for the colleges that are just FAFSA-only places, but it doesn't give you any sense of that context of the institution's methodology. It doesn't give families any kind of policy. They're just not thinking about what are the financial aid policies of this place. So basically, you're going to end up with the EFC that tells families actually what they need if a college is going to meet 100% of their needs. But it's not going to tell them what they get. And I really think that what we were encountering was families sitting there thinking, okay, I did my EFC, I did my FAFSA forecaster, this is great, this is what I need, this is what I get. Okay, but it's not what they're going to get, it's what they're going to need. So it's a tool, it's not a terrible tool, but it needs to be understood in the right context. So if FAFSA doesn't work, then we enter this phase of, okay, well, net price calculators, they were going to be our great saving feature of financial aid. Add some clarity to families' lives. Every college has to have their NPC online. That's been up and running for a while. Colleges have many different sources of, many different types of net price calculators. Some are elaborate, some are very simple. And the whole idea was great. Fantastic idea. Give people an idea of what kind of financial aid they're going to get. Right? They're going to plug in an institute, plug in their family's situation, and put it to work. So great idea, but again, it's a flawed tool. Okay? And why is it flawed? It's flawed because basically the number and the difficulty of these calculators is extraordinary. Okay, there can be all sorts of things that can go wrong. People need to actually file these forms, with careful, good, accurate data, and the colleges have so many different characteristics that they're considering. They're up against so many different kinds of policies within their admissions, within their financial aid packaging, that they're not always going to be, it's not an accurate tool for everyone. It's like a good general ballpark, you hope, if they're going to meet 100% of your needs, if they're not going to gap you, if there's nothing particularly complicated. So you love it thinking about when they say, okay, well, if your finances are really straightforward, their NPCs are really good for you. It's like, well, okay, who in the world, or what percentage of our family filers have like simple finances? How many of our families are actually filing like 1040 EVs? Not very many. They think about the calculators basically are asked. Oh, this is another thing that drove us crazy early on, and continues to. But we figured out how to sort of talk families through it. We're constantly talking to kids about protecting your privacy. Don't share your contact information. Don't use your social security number. Don't give out financial information. Be careful about what you put into cyberspace. These NPCs are absolutely like, give us all of your financial data. Put in all this information about yourself, and you don't even know what's happening with it when you put it in. This is like huge leap of faith for families. And again, if it just aren't giving you any kind of information about how this information is going to be used, it's a leap of faith for people that causes a lot of anxiety, and actually is asking for information that's really tough for families to accurately predict. So when we talk about this, like, what happens to them? Why are they so flawed? So from the family's perspective, as Jeff said, we're all complicit in the problems that we're facing with this particular, with financial aid right now. Families, many of them fail to complete the form fully. They get in and then they stop. They fail. Okay, that's not going to make it an effective tool. Many of them use like really poor or just basic estimated information. So like the garbage in, garbage out metaphors. Constantly it's on people's minds, or it's on our minds that, okay, well, you just sort of wung it when you did this. You can't just like wing it on your taxes, and eventually it's going to come back around and it's not going to be anywhere close to what you put in. People are making assumptions that the amounts are accurate, and so they're going to act really thinking about that. They're going to act according to this assumption that the amounts that they're putting in are actually accurate. So they sort of buy into the data. And then some people just completely ignore it. Okay, that we find is one of the things that drives us crazy about families and financial aid. It's a lot easier to ignore it. I could go up about 15 years ago. I was like, it's outrageous that people ignore this. And then I had my own children apply to college, and I'm like, oh God, financial aid. I just really pretty much pulled them up a few times and thought, I just don't want to deal with this right now. And then I'd come back around to it, thinking, oh, if only I knew somebody who knew something about admission and financial aid. I've been doing this for 30 years. But still, it was easier to ignore it than it was to actually deal with the hard realities of it. Because it's terrible. They ask you questions that you're like, I don't know. And you really don't feel like digging around for the answers to this. And then again, I mentioned this, the families rarely have simple finances. Rarely. Think about how many families are divorced. How many families have dependents that are demanding certain things from them. People's finances are complicated and they're personal, and the NPCs are just not set up to deal with that kind of nuance. From the college perspective, the reason they're flawed is it doesn't deal with any of that gapping. It doesn't deal with need-aware decisions. So it's making some estimations that don't actually come back around to fruition. So it's not thinking about the admissions policies. they have to be really careful to construct a device so that they aren't scaring people off. So the colleges are caught in a bad space as well because they don't want people to put some numbers in and then get this number that says, oh, forget it, we can't afford this. So there needs to be a lure, but it can't be such a lure that it's a promise. So they're caught in a tough spot. I think that it's a vague target, and there's a lot of language on the website saying this is a vague, this is a target, this is an estimate, but people want to believe it. So it's a little bit confusing for people. And then I think finally, some of these schools have been actually like they're omitting important pieces of information, like this package you're going to get is going to include self-help, loans. So they're deceptive. It's offering up a target that isn't realistic because parents might look at the results that they get in an NPC and say, oh, well that's okay. If this is the amount we have to contribute, then my kid can get a job. We can take out a loan. But that's being put on top of it, and they're not being clear about that. So overall, it's incomplete, misleading, and missing data that complicates these NPCs in a way that doesn't make it a reliable target for families. And then, okay, FAFSA doesn't work, NPCs aren't really trustworthy and reliable. You think, okay, fine, we'll just go ask the admissions office and the financial aid office. We're going to get good information from them. And honestly, you go into any college admissions office and you attend an info session, you read their materials, and you're going to get information about financial aid. Financial aid is an important part of college admissions. Everybody knows that. They're going to market the quality of their financial aid out of the gates. Like, that is a strong message that they need to and do present, which is true in one sense, yes? Like, colleges have huge amounts of financial aid. But the statistics that they actually give you, what you're going to hear all the time is, here's the percentage of the students are on financial aid. Here are the students with the average financial aid award. Like most of our kids, here's the total amount of scholarship aid awarded. So that sounds good, right? That's all interesting, luring, marketing information for people, but that's actually flawed too. And it's flawed because they're not actually telling an individual what their own package is going to look like. They're giving a bunch of statistics and data that are actually, they're accurate, but they aren't personal and they aren't going to help a family understand what they're actually going to pay for. So if you think about it, like what these families need to know and why these three statistics are not helpful to them, it's pretty basic statistics once you understand what's being put into these numbers. So the percentage of students on financial aid, that number always includes people with very, very, very tiny awards and very, very, very big awards. Okay, the more tiny awards they're going to give, the higher their percentage of kids on aid. They can manipulate that number big time. It doesn't talk at all about the actual percentage of the need that's met for those families. So that might be the average aid award, but it's not saying, this is the average aid award, but what's the average need of those families? Now, how close are we to matching the actual need of this family? When you think about like what's the average financial aid award, it is often directed toward protected groups. So they can't like reveal all of that in an info session, but it is certainly a reality. And when you think about sort of the total amount of scholarship aid awards, there's definitely there's evidence to suggest that many of those calculations include things like merit money, needs, federal funding, tuition discounting. And if they're putting all of their tuition discounting, for instance, into that calculation, that's a big number, and it's not actually reflecting the meeting of families' needs. So that's a frustrating reality. So what we've discovered is, what are the questions that they actually need to use? What do they need to ask? What's the information that would be extremely helpful? And some schools are starting to move in this direction. but generally, they need to know, do you actually meet 100% of needs of the admitted students? Are you need blind? So, great if you're meeting 100% of need, but are you actually need blind? At what point, if you're not need blind, then if you're going to be need aware, when does that kick in? When does that kick into your process? We have international students at our school, so international students have a different set of questions to ask. And it's really important for them because most international students who need aid have a really big hill to climb to try to find that. No surprise to you all. Trying to figure out, do the schools give merit aid that's beyond a demonstrated need? And if so, who gets that? What do those admitted students look like? I'm always reminded of a trip that Jeff and I went and served on a scholarship selection committee at Rhodes College, and those kids were amazing. They were getting, vying for huge merit money, full rides, three-quarters rides. They were incredible kids. The statistics of those kids was really impressive. It was rivaling all of the hyper-selective colleges of the kids that they wanted to. That's who they were competing against, is the most hyper-selective schools. But I think people walking into an admissions office and hearing about a big need, a big opportunity like that, assume that the criteria are going to be exactly the same as the admitted class, maybe sort of at the high end of what they see, but not like busting through the roof. So and I'm not saying Rhodes deliberately doesn't put this out there, but kids don't think to ask that question. They just make some assumptions in their own heads. Trying to figure out how kids actually will get into the merit stream, that's not always clear. So trying to frame them. And then, just as an aside here, we're like, okay, this is great. We need the answers to these questions. We need to collect the data to make it easier for kids and families to actually know exactly what the answers to all of those questions that are sometimes hard to get. So we started to ask the college admissions folks who were coming to visit us all of these questions. One after the other we're querying through. And at some point we just stopped. About 3 weeks into this experiment, we completely stopped because most of the admissions officers didn't know the answers. And it was incredibly frustrating. Some of them were funny. Some were like, okay, well, I do know the answers, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to tell you, so can I get back to you? And we go, okay, well, if you're going to hide all of this information, this is making it even more complicated.
So you can see the model that we're moving towards. You've got exploding costs that are making it difficult for families. The information that they need that's out there from the constructs that we all put in place. Again, using your facet federal methodology, the MPC, to try to get a rough target. The MPCs always make you think of when you make a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Right? The parents are putting in lousy data into a system that's supposed to be a little bit vague, so it's not the precision is actually a problem for everybody. What comes out doesn't really help. So then I'm going to go to the experts. I'm going to go talk to them. The admissions officer's coming next week. I'm going to sit down and ask them that question, and the answer's not there. So you would think that if you're a family, if you're a parent, somebody going through college, that given all this frustration and vagueness, you would make the effort to figure this stuff out. You have to. And what we discovered as we started talking to our families and doing more digging is that they're just not interested. They don't put in the effort. And that's where a lot of the blame lies. So we started laughing with the notion of gapping. Gapping as annotations. But we realized that there was a whole other side to mapping. So, again, given an investment over $250,000, they don't have the information they need, and they're willing to take on tremendous amounts of debt, available debt, sort of akin to the housing bubble. Like I will take on this purchase because the credit's available to me, not knowing what it's going to be down the line. How I was referencing the financial aid policies, the information you see on the website. I urge you to just pick 10 colleges, varying levels of selectivity, various places across the country. And go back to your room, your laptop tonight, right? And go on the financial aid website and see how many of them have the information that you need to be able, a family need to be able to figure this out. And you're going to be surprised. excellent language, complete commitment to supporting kids and college access, but not precision for them to be able to figure out how to navigate. So that leads us to the notion, like, where do they go? And increasingly they find they go or don't go to us. When they come to us, we always, a lot of you probably who are counselors, you have financial aid needs. And you're just shocked how few people come to that. And the people who absolutely need it rarely come. And the ones who do come, by far the first question at the end of the night is, I want some information on how I can hide my money. But they're willing to do these like 2-week trips to figure out where they want to apply. But they won't spend 2 hours figuring out financial aid. You know, going to Barnes & Noble in the college, in the college section. How many guidebooks are there? 75, 125? How many are in there on financial aid that aren't how to win a scholarship? Virtually none. And we'll get to this notion of bluntness, but we do have conversations all the time when we start to push the financial aid conversation. We'll have people who say, well, this really isn't appropriate for you. Our family finances are a personal issue. It's not something for you to be involved in. Well, I'm going to be involved, sorry. So it leads to what Holly was saying, which is, nope, not going to even think about this kind of stuff. So not only is it this sort of information gap that they're both unwilling and uninterested to procure, there's also this crazy reality gap with parents. It's like, well, I don't understand why there's an asset draw on my house in the Bahamas. That we made a decision that that's important to us. And my dad, the college, made a decision that your house in the Bahamas is important to them too. All right? But they don't like that. There's this like sort of reality check. And I love when I found this quote. And it's like you walk by the store and it says 50% off. Well, they've already doubled the price before they took that 50% off, but you feel like you're getting this great deal. This is great. Survey parents. Would they rather have, $36,000 tuition and $13,000 in aid, or just cut the tuition? Don't get involved in discounting. Just make the price tag lower. They wanted a higher price tag. So do one. That's a reality gap. Okay? And of course, every counselor in this room has the parent who comes in and says, well, I'm looking for some merit aid. Yes, Johnny's got 460, 450, 410, but there's got to be a school out there that values a 2.4 GPA kid. Great. There's merit aid for that kid, right? Yeah. Yep. The problem with this, though, with a lot of these things, and the reality gap was just a shutdown, is families with some means move into this and go, we're just going to find a way to do it. Or we'll pay for that college and not for that college. And then they'll take on that extra amount of money, which is great.
Okay, so switch directions again. Like another place where we find the frustrating lack of clarity around this is the financial aid award letter. So yay, you've got financial aid. Here it is. This is great. We're all dealing with this right now, and you can't even find in some instances the total award. Okay, it doesn't actually lay out exactly what you're going to get. There's so much missing information on some of these award letters that it's no wonder that families become confused. So if there's no acknowledgement that your loans are going to increase over 4 years, there's no clarity about what happens with your when you have siblings in college. People think, oh, that's great. They're just going to divide up my EFC. No, actually, they're going to each try to take 60%. That doesn't really add up so much, does it? But they don't talk about it. I think kids need help figuring out, can you actually meet the self-help requirements of this place? Is this something that, your summer earners, are you going to be able to pull that off? Some places include books, some places don't, but good grief. The last time, I'm so thankful my kids are out of college now because those book bills are huge, even when they're stretching around to get the used ones. So I think that the plus loan piece has added a level of complexity to families' lives. They're thinking, this is an extra loan on top of the loan that my kids are already getting.
It's a merit loan.
We did actually have a student who got a merit loan. A merit loan. That's so exciting. You're like, it's still a loan. It's not even a less. The interest rate's no different. So you're trying to figure this all out. You have no idea. The other thing, gotta make it work. So it's a
Could you
little.
go back for 1 second?
Oh, yeah.
Just so the college folks in the room that are sort of looking at this, raising their eyebrow a little bit, because they only know their own award letter and it could be very clean. You would be shocked at the number of award letters that do not have total cost of attendance anywhere to be found, which means you're laying out the 5 packages and you're doing the total and you're looking up and helping the kid know what they're actually paying. And you'd be stunned at how many don't indicate that the loans are going to escalate. The kids are sitting there going, okay, so it's 47 minutes. Okay.
I've never
Times
seen one.
4 is 19,000. I can handle that. But your loan debt is not going to be 19,000. It's going to be 30,000 as things go up over 4 years.
We love this quote that we found, that you shouldn't need a PhD in economics to read a financial aid award. So then, help was on its way, right? The shopping sheet. They came up with a new idea, this great shopping sheet. The first year we did this program, let me poll?
Sure.
Anybody know what the shopping sheet is?
Who knows who?
Who knows what the shopping sheet is? Yes.
Isn't that astonishing?
Yes. So, 2 people in the room know what the shopping sheet is. This is like, the big saving grace. And the truth is, it's like the standardized form to put it all out there, put actual data on that people can compare. It's what we all do in our offices to try to actually help kids sort out how the financial aid packages compare. It takes a lot of digging. The shopping sheet lays it all out there. Turns out that the colleges say the shopping sheet doesn't really do much. Okay, it's not helping that much. The students didn't necessarily know that it was available. They didn't know to ask for it, and most colleges don't even use it. I think we decided, what we've learned over time is that the only people who have to use it is for veterans. Is that right?
If your scholarship opportunities for veterans.
Scholarship
Taking money from the
opportunities for
federal
veterans. So if you're doing that, they need the shopping sheet. So, maybe it's going to come around. It seems like a great idea in the beginning, but
It's actually really cool. Look it up. It's a pretty nice.
I just want to read that. Okay, I think there's so much popular press now about loans being a frustration here. Families used to just say, okay, it's okay, we'll take out a loan. But the range of loans options is just mind-boggling at this point. And they're scattered through their award letters, subsidized, unsubsidized, plus loans, private loans. There's just so much out there that it's just flat out confusing. And what we've also uncovered is this just startling lack of financial literacy among our students. Somehow all of a sudden we become like the financial literacy counselors for these kids. Like, do you have any idea what how interest accumulates? What does that mean to you? There's this mindset of we're just going to make it work. We're going to figure it out, which doesn't really give any of us any particular confidence. What keeps us up at night in April is when kids are actually kids and families are seriously considering accepting a financial aid offer that includes tens of thousands of dollars worth of loans. And it's okay, we'll figure out a way. Some loans, great. Happy to have people take a normal, manageable amount of loans. I think it's really important, actually. But it's tough, yeah.
So in your opinion, what would be described as a reasonable loan?
Well,
How do you counsel your family?
it's a great question. I think it really depends on the family and the kid. But I start getting nervous when they've got, I guess I would say when the student loans are going to be sort of maxed out. I'm okay with all the normal sort of student loans, maybe $5,000 to $6,000 a year. And then family loans, like it depends on their circumstances, whether they can absorb some. But we really have families that are staring down like $80,000 collective loans. That to me is terrifying. That to me like feeds into kids having a lifetime of loan debt to pay. But I remember paying off my student loans. I wasn't very young. And I didn't have very many compared to what is being thrown at people now.
It's a good question because reasonable is determined by individual circumstances and family finances. But that's a consideration after you take in notion like repayments and what feels comfortable for you and what your long-term professional goals are. And it's the reason why it's in quotes is because that lack of financial literacy, none of the conversations are taking place to make that reasonable assertion. That's where the big gap is. So I might think a reasonable loan debt is $10,000. You might think it's $20,000. That's over time that's going to work. But we've got families that are thinking that it's $40,000 or it's $80,000. to the point where we're literally pounding our hands on the desk saying, you will not take that offer. You will not. You'll never get out from under it.
I'm really mindful of our time. What time's the next session?
I don't
Do we
know.
know? Okay, I just want to be careful. So you Google this all you like. You get multiple hits. You get folders of things about all the sort of loan debt crisis. But there are major implications for excessive loans. Outside scholarships. Okay, so if you're not going to get a loan, how about a scholarship? Like, oh, we'll just patch it in with some scholarships. But and they're again all lured into thinking there's billions of dollars of unassigned scholarships. We love those kinds of flyers. Like, okay, where? Like, what exactly? Where is that? Sounds completely easy. They lure them in, but typically, what we find is these awards, they're typically too good to be true. Okay, the majority of them is like employer paid benefits. That's a huge piece of it. The odds of winning these things are tiny. The big ones, anyway, the ones that really have some significant impact. And instead, it's the kids tend to look into these things too late. Like they come in April and go, "Can I get some scholarships?" You're like, "Yeah, if you had applied 6 months ago, that would have been really a good thing to try." And the deadlines are all over the place. There's scholarship scams all over the place. It's not. They're not even clear about the fact that it's not a yearly opportunity, so it's a sort of a one-shot deal. Colleges don't tend to talk about the fact that sometimes they're going to claim some of that money. They have some reach into those to offset their grants. So there's a lot of murky gray area around scholarships.
Right. So add that question to the list of when the admission officer comes in the fall. What do you do with outside scholarships? How does it apply to financial aid packages? Not many will know. And what's interesting, and so a kid is like, I'm going to get some scholarships, and then ends up at a school that says, thank you for those scholarships. We're going to take 75% of it and reduce your grant, and the other 25% we're going to do to reduce your loan. Parents and families, EFC doesn't change. Okay. So what all this has created is this circumstance where in the upper middle income bracket, people that are trying to hide their money, are starting to move from this ability to pay, right, versus willingness to pay. That's a great, I don't know, whoever coined that phrase was a genius, but we hear it all the time from our friends on the college side. It makes sense in terms of that evolution. And now we're hearing, well, I have the ability to pay, I have some willingness, but I really am only willing for this school. Otherwise, Johnny's paying off. Right? And the other income brackets, they're just the middle income. They're just completely delusional. No information, high loan debt, completely aspirational because they want to join that other side, but do so in just like sort of blind swatting the flock. Right? And then obviously the group that we worry about dramatically, that lowest income bracket, who does not have the information, they may not have the people that are in this room, but get the they're the ones that completely shut down. And there's some organizations out there that are saying the FAFSA can be 7 questions. Well, when they see how it is now, they start to do it and stop. It's too much. Right? And then they, of course that's the group that looks at the TCA, or COA, and goes, "There's no way I can afford that." And we've all had those conversations with high achieving, high achieving kids, and go, no, you're okay. We can find a place for you. Don't be scared. And so which is the where are you now putting it all together. So, we had a great, I did this program, our version of this program with a high concentration of college folks, and one dean stood up and said, look, you're giving loans far too much credit here, so to speak. It is good for kids to have loans. We're like, you are completely right. Like, they should have some skin in the game. So they have a responsibility to their long-term education. But what's happening now is, you have kids that financial literacy piece comes back in. And while that's an issue we can talk about, by far the highest number of loan defaults are in for-profit colleges. You say, well, for-profit colleges, so what? 2 largest colleges in the United States are for-profit colleges. And from our perspective, this is a really sort of slippery slide. I'm not sure really how we feel about it. I mean, we're really conflicted about this. But we know from the college side that they're really trying to stretch their budget. They're trying to meet their goal. They're trying to do everything they can to make this all work. They may offer a certain amount knowing they may get that kid, but not more to make sure they would get that. I mean, it's completely reasonable to put that together. trying to really push a financial aid office, trying to deal with their own finances in legal but creative ways, they're seen as unethical. And it's this really interesting dynamic that we're trying to fight through. You have one side of the party, one core kind of pulling out the college cost dollar, the other one pulling on the college cost dollar. But one side is seen as this is the practice, the other side is seen as you're being an unethical family. Still working through that. And to add to the whole mix, and again, we have at our institution with 60% full pay families, 65% full pay families. So we're living this, right? That notion of what they're willing to take on loan debt for, what they're willing to pay for, that ability to pay for X school, it's crazy. And so we sort of coined this in our own office. It's the Ponies, Porsches, and Penn State model, right? 8-year-old girl says, I want a $20,000 show pony. You say, no, that's not appropriate. 16-year-old says, I want a Porsche for my birthday. Most families say, no, that's not appropriate. I want to take on $40,000 in loan debt, right, to attend this school versus going to my home state school and going to the honors program. How many parents say, no, that's not appropriate? At that point, that whole system breaks down. So, how do we solve this?
Yeah, we want to solve this, actually. We have all, yeah. And so we really sat for a long time in our office and thought, okay, what are we going to do about this? And we took some energy from our work with our international aid students who we had sort of front burner this before, saying, okay, what are we doing with that cohort of kids? We have a very different process. Frankly, we said, all right, we need to rethink our model. We need to go at this from a proactive perspective. So here's sort of the overview, and we'll deep dive into a few of them. We're beginning that college search with what families can actually afford versus what they want. It's a very different starting place to try to get people to start thinking about the finances out of the gate. It's unpleasant in one way, right? But we need to think about that. New selectivity categories. We introduced a whole new set of selectivity categories for people, which we'll discuss. Clarifying and streamlining outside scholarship access. Separating the financial aid office from the admissions office. Thinking about how do we introduce financial literacy into our, use it as a teachable moment for these kids if they're thinking it needs to happen. Getting kids and families to ask the right questions, to actually become conversant in the language of financial aid so they know, they can actually root around and get what they need so that they understand. And very specifically clarifying some communication between all of the parties so that we're not being vague. Okay? We decided lunch is better. It was our financial aid motto that we took on for the last few years, and it's actually changed our dialogue. So we'll dive into some of these for you. Beginning the college search with what families can afford and what they want. So instead of saying, oh gosh, do you like big or small or rural or all of the little things that we ordinarily do, you basically are saying, you need to figure out what kind of financial aid applicant you are. Are you someone who, if they need 100% of your needs, you're good? Are you someone who needs merit money as part of your financial aid package? Really trying to get them to articulate, to dig in, to use those MPCs and understand them. I love the notion of, I'll never shake the feeling of having to sitting down to do the CSS profile for the first time and getting to that question that says, how much can you afford how much are you going to contribute for your kid's education? And I just looked at it and go, oh my God, I don't know, what can I afford? I was like, I know I can't afford as much as they want me to pay, but I don't know, what do I write in that box? So trying to say, this is a big deal. We really have pushed this conversation forward. So instead of like, oh, you should sit down and have a conversation with your kid about financial aid, we're like, you need to go talk to your parents right now. You guys need to sit down and work the MPCs. You need to run your fastest forecasters. You need to collect this information and be serious. Like, have this conversation. And we're circling back around to make sure that they actually have. We thought about those selectivity categories. And from our perspective, MidLevel Probable doesn't really cut the mustard anymore for financial aid lenders. Because if a probable, in terms of admission, is not going to meet 100% of their needs, or they're going to be need aware on those kids, all of a sudden their prospects of creating a balanced list completely change. So we developed new categories, and we're holding kids accountable in those like final list check meetings to say, you need to answer these questions. These kinds of categories are more important for you than your old reach mid-level probable. State universities. We can't force our kids to apply to their state universities, but man, do we strong on them. We are, you need this on here. This is a financial aid security for you. Put it on your list. Which one are you going to pick? Not, and you need to be able to get into that one. But just have it on your list. Schools that meet 100% of need, which are probable for admission for me. Okay? Just because there's plenty of hyper-selective colleges that meet 100% of need, but if the kid can't get in, then what good is that on their list? So they have to find those 100% of need schools in the probable.
This is a form that they have to fill out if they're applying for financial aid. They can do a reach mid-level probable elsewhere, but this is a form that they have to fill out.
Yeah, need-aware schools. So again, need-aware schools are great. They're fine. It's not a big deal that it's a need-aware school, but they need some need-aware schools that are where they're actually at the high end of the admitted student profile, so that their need awareness, the school's need awareness, isn't going to get in the way of this kid getting a financial aid package. That's the nuance they need. With the merit scholarship schools, it's thinking about, am I like way at the top? Schools that offer merit money, but where I'm the top part of their admitted student profile, that's what we need on those lists. So you'll love it when a kid is being able to take that information and come in and talk through this. And we've sort of had some breakthroughs with kids, two in particular. One wrote on a sheet to me, he's like, as I, work to finalize my final list, I know I need to find like 2 more schools that meet 100% of need and that that are really probable for me in terms of admission. Great, thank you so much. Another kid sitting in a financial aid seminar, like she came back to a second version of it. She's sitting there and I'm like, what are you doing? You're back again. This is great. She said, I'm going to get this. I'm going to really understand this because my sister really messed this up and I can't do that. I'm going to learn how this works and I'm going to go at it.
Just to clarify something very quickly.
Okay.
I lost it there. So what kind of financial aid applicant you are, that getting that, calculating that data. So we ask you to come back in and say, if in your family circumstances, meeting 100% of financial need and the EFC is calculated is acceptable to you, that's one category. If you go through those calculations and you need merit aid on top of 100% of need, that's another category. If you're the kind of kid who needs an incredible amount of financial aid, that's another category. Okay? They need to know how they're going to build their list based upon where their family's finances are going to go beyond doing the calculation. So as part of it, the NPCs are useful to them. They're blunt tools, but what we've done is redefine them, okay? And actively seek out ones that we think are accurate, are detailed, that have a certain number of questions. But when we describe them to families, it's not go do an NPC to find out what your aid package might look like there. It's just the NPC is a reasonable approximation of family finances if you do it fully with accurate information and at a school that meets 100% of need. That's the information you're getting. Don't do an NPC thinking the data kicks out. And they get a little bit shaken by that, but it helps them do more work as they move forward. Okay? We will spend a lot of time separating the financial aid office from the admission office. Okay? They come back from the tour or they come from the alumni interview. He loved me. Okay? And think that this was all going to work out both admission side and financial aid side. And one of the hardest conversations we've had in the last probably 3 years since we started this is when the kid gets the MLK Community Service Scholarship Award letter. $25,000 you've just been awarded. And we have to say to that kid, okay, you need to think about this from an admissions marketing perspective. This is trying to get you excited about this school. Financial aid hasn't weighed in yet. This may be the only award you get. Let's hold on. And then, of course, we're the dream crushers. But they have to do it. Okay?
Yeah. So, clarifying and streamlining outside scholarship access, I would argue this is one of the ones that we haven't had a good traction with yet. This is our goal. But trying to distribute information to kids, if some of you have better practice on this, I would love to hear it because we're trying to again, once you know you're a kid, if a kid is saying, I'm a kid who needs some scholarship money on top of this, it's like, lay it out for them, establish a plan. We're trying to think about getting some cohorts of kids together to sort of provide a little bit of a support group for them, a little bit of an email distribution group for them to say, okay, this cohort really wants some scholarship money. They're all a bunch of STEM kids. Let's like get them together and get them to be filling out some of these, finding and filling out these things together. So we're really working on this outside scholarship thing. I think we need to push it way earlier in the process and be kind of aggressive about it. But again, it's really linked to the kid knowing that they need to find some scholarship money. The financial literacy moment, I think, we are saying, all right, this is a teachable moment. Trying to find some good resources online for kids to actually sit them down. That mapping your future, I think we really like. Trying to get some sort of take-home pay calculators to give them a rough estimate of what they're facing. It certainly wasn't part of what we expected our job to be 25 years ago when we got into this business. But you know what? It's just part of it now, and we're just saying, okay, we're not going to just say it's somebody else's job to teach these kids this. Okay, so the questions in the admissions office, financial aid offices, we are getting kids conversant in this language. Okay, I don't want a kid confused about a college's financial aid options. So giving them the tools and the language and the understanding to process it, to become financial aid experts is great. We've seen it work. We definitely have kids who are asking those tough questions at college fairs and college visits. And I think that generally the admissions officers are really actually appreciate their curiosity around it. They're a little taken aback initially, but in the end of the day, I think it's something that we're getting good traction on, and the kids are starting to be more of a partner in it. And the parents, parents really want to be educated on this too. We have a residential population, so the parents are far away, but being able to say to parents, here are some financial aid websites that actually are really useful. Kenyon has a great one. Skidmore has a really good NPC. So when we find them, we celebrate them. And we've had some really interesting conversations with our admissions cohort to say, I'd really do this presentation, Holly. Tell us what you want on what's really helpful. Can you look at my website and help me think about, what would be clear, how we can be more user-friendly, how we can become one of the schools that you list as a great option for understanding this process. And Kenyans need aware. Again, that's not bad. But they're clear about it on their website. They're not hiding some of this information.
So just to sort of bring everything quickly to a close, we made a decision in terms of our communication, to say, and we take heed for this, we don't mind it. If the kid comes in, I'm applying for financial aid, you say, okay, same with the international students. Your process will be different, okay, because you're applying for financial aid. And kids push back on that, parents push back on that, but it is. It's different because they're applying for financial aid. We'll need to get that different on. Gets right back to the forms is better. We're going to come out and the parent says, not your role to talk to my kid about financial literacy and my family finances. Then we say, well, you're not doing it, so we're going to. Okay? Has to be done. Push versus pull. This gets back to the financial aid nights when nobody shows up. For a while, we were offering the notion of giving all this financial aid information on the mailing list. Nobody took it. Now they have to have it, and the only way they can, they have to opt out. Now they're not going to get it anymore. So these are the solutions that we came up with that we're working on. Many are going very well. A couple we still have to work on. But one of the things that this has evolved into is our financial aid night with the kids. Now is completely different. Very few acronyms, no formula, no discussions that involve contour math. But this is the very first slide, okay? And we say to the kids, this is your final exam for dealing with financial aid. We're going to talk about all these issues, but if you do these 7 concepts, you will have a place to go to college that's affordable, right? And you can see all of these. Some of the pieces are the same, but we take a lot of that information and that question asking in the background and go out on financial aid kids from this perspective. In many ways, from the philosophy of it's their responsibility. loans. They're going to fill out the paperwork. They're going to do the work study. Right? They have to give their parents permission to look at their award letter once they leave us, and throw it completely onto them, but give them the tools to be able to do it, because in our experience, not many of the parents are doing it. So that's what we're trying to do. It's an evolution. We've seen some success in flipping the model on its head. As I said, it's happening from a perspective of the old model wasn't working for us anymore. We're happy to hang out for a little bit while the transition sessions is taking place and answer questions. But thanks so much for coming this morning. Have an awesome day. Thanks.